everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. I'm Stephen Cabral, board-certified naturopathic doctor, and thank you for joining me on this Motivation and Mindset Monday. Looking forward to bringing you actually one of my favorite books from a long time ago. It's one of those books that really stays with you, that after you read it, you're not exactly the same. And I know a lot of people from our online community who listen to the Cabral Concept have probably read this book in the past, but maybe not really kind of gone back, or maybe it's been a decade, 2 decades, or 3 since you read it. And that book that I'm talking about today that I really want to kind of do a deep dive into is a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Now, those of you who don't know this book, those of you who don't know who Dr. Frankl was, is he went on to become actually a very famous psychiatrist and did some really seminal, some phenomenal works in terms of psychiatry and just overall philosophy that I want to share with you today. But the book, Man's Search for Meaning, it's not a big book. It's something that can easily be read in a night or maybe 2. And it's something that I do recommend. So I'll link that up in today's show notes. Again, anything from today's show, you'll simply go to stephencabral.com/668. So why am I bringing this up today? Well, on our Motivation and Mindset Mondays, what we're really trying to do is change our mindset in order to reprogram previous conditioning that has led us to the life we're at right now. Now, the life we're at right now may not necessarily be that bad, and that's great if that's the position you're in right now, where others, they might be struggling, and that's not exactly where we want to be. We want to be moving forward towards our best life, and the way that we can do that is start to understand, start to become more self-aware of what got us to where we are in the first place. Now, just like our health, we can sometimes suffer from some acute-based issues where we're suffering, but we know that it's short-term because maybe someone that we loved passed away and we're in the grieving process, and that's totally understandable. Or right now, we're sick right now and we have a cold, and again, we just know that's going to be gone in another 1 or 2 weeks, or maybe we're dealing with a child that has the same type of thing and, we're up with them throughout the night, and so we're feeling fatigued. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about right now is moving our life in a long-term situation, a long-term condition. So if you're not where you want to be because, you don't have the career, the relationships, the health, the body that you want, or the spirituality, there's something missing. And whenever it's missing and you don't know what it is, for the most part, none of us know what's missing, right? We just know we're not where we want to be. Because if we knew what was missing, we would most likely use that knowledge to then acquire the thing that is missing, or we'd at least work towards it. And that's a big part of Viktor Frankl's work. So A Man's Search for Meaning was essentially memoirs, or was written from Dr. Frankl's time as a Holocaust survivor. He was in, I believe, 4 different concentration camps over 3 years. I believe it was like 1942 to 1945. And what he found, and this is very, very interesting, what he found over his time in those concentration camps, being with thousands of others in those camps, is that the people who seemed to survive or survived the longest or did the best under the worst conditions possible. Really conditions where no human should ever be subjected to. And people were starving. They were literally dying from malnutrition or no food at all, just given bread and maybe some water. But what he found was the people in the concentration camps who got up every morning and seemed to have some type of purpose in their life seemed to survive. And he tried to figure out what was the reason for this. And this led him, obviously, to some deep introspection. And what he found was he disagreed with Freud. He came up with his own philosophy, his own form of psychiatry. So Freud was really the belief that we always, as humans, we're always seeking out pleasure. And I think there's maybe something to that, but that's in more of a short-term overall life philosophy. What we looked at with Dr. Frankl, who I'm a complete believer in his logotherapy, or at least from the perspective is this, is that really as humans, at the end of our life, we're saying, did my life have any meaning? And, his book, Man's Search for Meaning, kind of goes through this in his memoir type of style. But really what he was saying, and really what we ask ourselves is, did our life have meaning from the perspective, did it matter? And so what he's talking about is not a pursuit of pleasure, but the pursuit of happiness through purpose. That's the biggest thing that I think a lot of us are missing, where we're saying, well, I need to find out what makes me happy. Sometimes the answer is not looking for what makes us happy, but rather what is giving our life purpose. life does not always have to be wake up, smile on the face, like everything's great. I'm just, going out whistling and, looking at the birds and all those things. That's not always what life is about. Because as Viktor Frankl said, we cannot escape suffering during our life. The Buddhists said that. Everyone has said that, right? Throughout human history, there will be some suffering in your life. That's part of the human condition. I personally used to try to deny that. I said, nope, my life is going to be one of basically Zen. It's going to be no highs, no lows. And I actually did that. I did that for probably a period of a couple years. I'll tell you right now, that is not the life you want to live either. You actually want the highs and lows. You want to experience the entire human condition. Now, you don't want to get too high and you don't want to get too low, that's for sure. You want to keep things in perspective. Perspective will always allow you to enjoy the highs and the lows. And yes, you can actually enjoy the lows after it's over because you can take meaning from that, which we're going to go through today. But what you want to do is not always be searching, like I said, what's going to make us the most happy or the happiest. And why would I ever say that? The reason is this. The reason is actually pretty simple. Because those things that make us the happiest are sometimes fleeting. Meaning like, oh, well, that meal, going out on that date, going out on the whatever, yes, it makes us happy, sure. And you should do it, but you can't make a life out of that. You have to make a life out of purpose, out of passion, and the pursuit for something that has meaning for you. And so how do you find things in your life that you want to work towards? The pursuit of something meaningful. The pursuit of purpose. Well, essentially, it is getting really clear with yourself. And that's why I'm doing this particular show in December. I want you to be fully prepped when we go all out to have our best 2018. But you have to do the work now. And the work is not hard. And the work will be for the rest of your life. But the work right now, is getting started. So what does that mean overall? Well, it means sitting down and think to yourself right now, well, what does it mean for me to feel this spirituality, this connectedness with the world? It could be through your community, your church, synagogue, whatever it might be. That's your prerogative. Same with relationships, Every day is not going to be the best day ever with your significant other or your children or whatever day it is. But what are you working towards? What's the main goal with them? Is it spending more time? Is it spending, not as much time because you might not live near each other, but more quality time? Do you say, okay, we're going to shut off computers and phones after 7 p.m. at night? That's it. It's only going to be for emergencies or whatever. That's it. Because it's going to be quality time after that time. What are you working towards? Same with career. Career is such a big one. Why do I talk about career a lot if I'm a functional medicine doctor, if I'm a naturopathic doctor? Well, why am I talking about this? Well, the truth is this, is that your coping in life, your ability to deal with stress, all of these things deals with your overall happiness quotient. And we're talking about a career. We're talking about not short-term pleasure. We're talking about what can I do with my life in my career that potentially serves others, that then also gives me meaning, and I can make enough money to meet my financial goals, whatever those might be. And remember, most of us, that's like half of our day minimum, right? Is our work. And it's usually like a Monday through a Friday. So it's an enormous part of your life. You're at work. You're with your coworkers most likely more time than you're with your significant other. It has to have meaning. Now, let's say, well, my work will never have meaning really for me, not as much. Well, then, okay, if that's the case, what's your hobby? What's your outside of work career goal or passion that you can then put your pursuit of happiness through that? Or if you're a mother or father who stays home with your children and your job is to really hold the family together, that is, I would say, arguably the most important job because you are the person who's essentially running the entire family. And that to you then has to have its own meaning, its own purpose. And you have to see it as that as well, as that you have such an enormous role in shaping the lives of your entire family. Same with your significant other. We talked about that a little bit in terms of overall family, but it's so important too that you make sure that there's that same chemistry, that same vitality and passion in that relationship by planning a date night or by just knowing what is my goal with my spouse. Is it to travel a couple times a year or, again, whatever that might be? And then for your own health, wellness, and we'll say body transformation, think about those things. Because here's the thing. If you know what your ideal body is and you know that that gives you great self-confidence, well then having that goal is going to allow you then to suffer, and I have that in air quotes, by when you go out with your friends and you don't choose the pasta dish and the cheesecake and the bottle of wine. That's temporary because you know your long-term goal is living in the body that you want. And you know that you're someone when you eat those additional carbs and sugars, it just forces you, it causes you to put on more weight than maybe your friends. Okay, short-term happiness, Freudian happiness would be, okay, eat the cheesecake, have the wine, do those things. And that lasts what? 20 minutes, 30 minutes of pleasure, maybe a couple hours through that dinner. Okay, great. What about the next day and the next week as you are now trying to work off that glucose spike, that insulin spike, and the subsequent inflammation and body weight gain? That is not what you're working towards for your ideal self. So there are some sacrifices that would be made. And same with health. There are things that you need to do in the short term. Getting to bed before midnight, getting to bed earlier, right? Sleeping a little bit more, turning off the stress by 8 p.m. at night, making all of these changes so that you can one day wake up with all the energy that you could ever imagine, right? And sometimes we don't even know that that's a possibility, but it is. I'm here to tell you that it is. Anything you want for yourself right now, anything that you can envision, anything that you see in someone else, you can have that as well. You truly can. Now, can it be maybe a little bit more of an effort for you to get it than someone else? Sure. And that goes, again, for body types. It goes for, what we've been given in terms of like mental, emotional based faculties, meaning there is something to that. So I could be pretty good at math, but I'm not as good as some of the people that I know or proficient who are heads of CEOs of like hedge funds, those sorts of things. I mean, they could do square roots of like thousands in their head, and that's just not my thing, right? So I can be proficient in math, pretty good at it, but not to that level. But I can still achieve all the things that I need to. I'm just not going to be at their specific position, right? But I'm saying in terms of your health, your wellness, your relationship, you can have those things in your life as well. And that's really what we're talking about. So here's the bigger thing, and here's the second part. So I want to give you kind of two parts to today's talk. This thing called logotherapy, and I don't even know if I'm exactly pronouncing that as well as Viktor Frankl would approve of. But from my study of his, and I actually have studied his form of psychology and psychiatry, is that there's a big thing. We can't control the suffering that we might have to go through. So a lot of people, when they talk about the law of attraction or visualization and how, I would never have attracted that into my life. Well, some of that's true, okay? Like we can't control when a grandparent, parent, sibling, someone passes away. We can't control that. And we suffer because we obviously love that person and they're no longer physically in our life. And there's grieving that takes place. We cannot control that. Just like Viktor Frankl couldn't control being taken to the concentration camps. Worse than anything I will probably ever experience in my life, right? That most of us will. And hopefully that's true. Hopefully nothing deplorable as that would ever take place in our life. But we can't always control any of the situations. Again, they don't have to be as grave as that. It could be losing a job. It could be breaking up a relationship. It could be having a sick child. It could be any of these things. It could be any of these things. And Viktor Frankl is saying you're not supposed to deny the suffering, the bad times in your life. But you can control and you can decide how you want to respond to it. And this is the really hard part. Because we all feel entitled to our suffering. We feel entitled to our grieving. We feel entitled to maybe be a victim to our current circumstances. And I don't always know if that's necessarily such a bad thing in the short term. Because I don't also believe that we should deny our current circumstances as a human going through this human experience. But what I can tell you is this, and I can tell you this from having a practice where I've seen thousands of people, is that suffering, your own suffering, meaning like taking the outside world, taking your outside circumstances and internalizing them inside of you, what I can tell you is it's only going to make you more stressed, cause more inflammation. And it is going to cause sickness, and it will most likely cause disease. And that's the unfortunate part. Because our nervous system, basically our psychology, how we see things, how we see the world, how we internalize it, affects our physiology. It affects our nervous system. It affects our adrenals. It affects our thyroid. It affects our cholesterol. It affects our blood pressure. It can cause autoimmune-based issues. I know many people in my practice where they're totally fine in terms of psoriasis until a very stressful event hits them. We know all of these things in terms of psychology can affect our physiology. So what I'm saying to you is not to deny your current circumstances in life, but decide how you want to perceive that. Going forward, you can't do anything about the past. That's okay, and nor should you. You should learn from the past. You should understand that you're going to have hardships even in the future. And when you do, you're going to allow yourself to feel it, but then you need to start to move still in the direction of purpose. And to use maybe what you're going through right now as something that will fuel you in the future. And I try to say that all the time, to myself as well. It's like, it's hard when you're in it. It really is. So when I was going through that suffering for a strong 5 years, meaning from like 17 to 22, 23 years old, my sickness was bad. It was up and down, relapse, start to feel like I was getting better, relapse again. I mean, that's truly tough, especially as, a college student, and it's supposed to be the time of your life. And again, it was. I was still enjoying the experience, but there was a lot of times I was suffering. If I did do all these things, I would be sick. I would have the swollen glands. I would feel run down. It would be harder to study, all of those things. And it continued on even after college. And it affected my mood greatly, which affected then relationships. And it affected, all facets of my life. Okay? But here's what I did. I've mentioned this before. There was one specific night, another night of just not being able to sleep. I had some of the worst insomnia you could possibly imagine. I said to myself this. I literally said to myself, I'm not going to be able to sleep once again tonight. And I don't know how to fix any of this. And neither did any of the doctors that I met with at the time. Now, of course, there's a lot more information and you can heal anything. You really can. But the truth is I didn't have access to that information back then. That's all there was to it. So I wasn't going to sleep that night. But I said to myself this, I'm not going to be able to sleep again tonight, but tomorrow I'm going to be fine. I'm going to wake up fine. And if I don't ever get well, if I don't get over whatever this is, whatever Addison's disease, EBV, myalgic encephalomyelitis, the blood sugar issues, the cholesterol, everything. If I never got over that, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to start living my life on my terms. I'm going to start being happy for basically none other reason than I want to be happy. And that there are things in my life that I want to accomplish. So if I never get better, if I always feel tired, if I always feel exhausted, if I have this fibromyalgia, if I can't work out because I just get so sore and so run down and I get a sinus infection right away, so be it. But I'm still going to work towards my goals of myself getting well, even if maybe I never get well. I'm still going to work towards it because it's worth it. I'm still going to work on my body to transform my body. I'm still going to have the best relationship I can. I'm still going to travel. I'm still going to pursue my goals of nutrition and exercise and strength and conditioning. And this is before I even decided to become a naturopathic doctor. I was still said, no matter what, despite my circumstances in life, that I was going to move forward. And that's my recommendation for you today, is sometimes you're not going to know how to get out of the situation that you're in right now. And my recommendation is that's okay. You will figure it out. It might not be tomorrow or next week or next month, but you will. All I want you to do is this. Don't let your present circumstance decide how you're going to then face life. Compartmentalize that. I understand. Easier said than done. But what I want you to do is try. I don't want you to have to be a victim your whole life of whatever circumstance it is. Usually, not for everyone, but a lot of times it's one part of our life that could be a whole lot better. Sometimes it's really bad. It is. And sometimes you are suffering. What I want you to do is, in despite of that, and again, not easy, easier said than done, but despite of that, I want you to start to move forward. I don't want you to look back 10 years from now, 20 years, 30 years from now. I don't want you to look back and have any regrets. I want you to start moving forward in terms of whether it's spirituality, relationships, your career, your health, your body, okay? I want you to take one of those things and I want you to start planning a future that you can be happy about. And again, not in terms of getting pleasure from that activity, but instead in terms of purpose from it. I want you to feel like what you do matters, that you do matter, that whether it's you being the one that takes care of your family, you being the one that is going out a career, changing your career to something in health, okay? Or you trying to find that person in your life that you've been searching for, that you wanted to meet. Any of those things, they're all great goals. It's never my job to tell you what your goal should be. It's simply my job to see if I can help you change directions. You can no longer continue on the same path that you've been and expect to get different results. So I simply want you to reframe how you're currently looking at your life. And after you reframe it, just enough to be open to the possibility that there's more for you out there, as long as you're willing to go out and look for it. So the last recommendation, last thing today is this. Whenever we come across suffering in life, whenever we are suffering in our own way, okay? Because again, it's always subjective. It's dependent on us. Understand this, that the human experience, as far as I can understand it, we will go through suffering in our life. I always just say, I hope that the lows, we move through those quickly. And I hope that the highs last for as long as they can. But when we are suffering, know that this will end soon enough. And during that time of suffering, give yourself time to feel it, but then understand that you do not need to internalize it. It's one part of your life, and I want you to start moving forward. Continue every day waking up, feeling like you do matter, that you do have purpose, and that each and every day you're working towards even greater meaning in your life. And that to me is the meaning of life. It's working towards something with purpose, on purpose, that leads to then passion. That, of course, then leads to hopefully serving others, and that's where we derive, I believe, our happiness from. So thank you, everyone, for tuning into another Mindset and Motivation Monday. Thank you for allowing me to share one of my favorite books, one of my favorite philosophies as well. It's called A Man's Search for Meaning. We'll link it up in the show notes. It's by Dr. Viktor Frankl, and if you haven't read it before, it's absolutely worth the read. Take care. As always, thank you again for tuning into the Cabral Concept. This past year has been amazing in terms of watching our community grow and accomplish so much. And each month, I try to do my best to share with you something I believe would help take your health and wellness to the next level. This month, I want to do something I've never done before, and that's offer our very first sale at StephenCabral.com. You may not know this, but the holiday season is my favorite time of the year. Not only do I love being able to spend more time with friends and family, but it also means we're closing out one year and getting ready to start fresh in a new one. That's why I want you to be able to give the gift of health and wellness to those you love, and also pick up anything you need in order to have your very best 2018. So for the month of December 2017, I'm going to be offering 10% off all nutritional supplements and functional medicine lab testing site-wide. To take advantage of our special holiday offer in limited quantities, simply go to StephenCabral.com/store and use the coupon code HOLIDAY. Thank you again for your support of the Cabral Concept, and happy holidays to you and your family.